Now is the time to look at another useful Bootstrap component, which is called a modal. A modal is kind of like a pop-up window which you can give any information to the user. In our case, we're going to be adding a sign up section at the bottom of our site. Then when a user clicks on the sign up button, this will then activate a modal window where the user can sign up using a form. Once the modal has popped up, we can still click off it and return back to the original page. Let's now head over to our index page and see how to add a modal. To begin, at the bottom of the page, I'm going to create a sign up section. This will basically be a row with some text on one side saying sign up for exclusive offers, and then a button on the right hand side to click on which activates the modal. So right at the very bottom of our HTML, so scroll right down, I'm going to add a new container for this section. So this can go right at the very bottom, just above this JavaScript. Let's create a new div, and this is going to have a new class of container fluid, which makes it the fluid full width of the page, and then also BG dark to give it the background color. Inside of here, we can add our div with the class of row. Close this off. And then we need to add two new classes for our left section and the right section. The left section is going to be a div, and this is going to have the class of col md7, which will make it 7 parts wide on the medium-sized devices and above. And then a second section just below, which will take up the remaining 5 parts. So this needs to have the class of col md5, giving us our 12 column grid. So now this grid is in place, we can first add some sign up text, which is going to go on the left hand side inside of these p tags. So sign up for exclusive offers, ... And then we need to add a button on the right hand side, which will activate our modal pop-up. So inside the 5 section on the right, let's add a button with the type of button, and then some Bootstrap classes. The first one is btn, and then btn success. So btn is the standard base styles for a button. Then btn success will give it the green background color. If we save that and check this out in the browser, this is right at the very bottom. So we can just about see our text on the left hand side here, and then the button here. So this doesn't look too good at the moment, but some Bootstrap classes should fix this. We also need to add some text inside the button too. So let's do that first. And we can add the text of sign up here. So inside this row, we can add the class of text center, and this pushes all the text to the center of the div. Let's see how this is looking. Refresh. Good, so our button and also the text is in the center of each one of the containers. Let's make this text now light and also italic. This is in the left hand side, so we can add it in this div just here. So after md7, we have the utility class of text light. Again, this is also provided by Bootstrap, and also font italic. So these are pretty self-explanatory. So if we save and see how this is looking. Good, so now our text is now this white color and also italic. We'll also improve on this later by adding some margin and padding, and we'll do this in a later video. But for now, let's move on to constructing our pop-up modal. This can be added anywhere inside of our code, but I'm going to add mine just under this sign up section. So back over to our code, and then again right at the very bottom below this sign up div here, we're going to add our modal section. So let's add a comment. Okay, so now we need to add our surrounding div. This is going to have a class of modal and also fade. This fade class is a fading effect provided by Bootstrap, and this will make the transition nice and smooth. Inside of here we add a new div, and this should be fairly familiar. We're just basically constructing divs with Bootstrap classes to add our nice styling. So the class of modal dialog. This class of modal dialog makes a modal narrower. If we remove this, it makes the modal the full width of the page. So I'm just going to keep modal dialog in place to keep this nice and compact. And then a new div nested inside. This is going to have the class of modal content. So this is the content we want to have inside of our modal, and this is split up between a header section, a body, and a footer. So now we add 3 new divs at the same level. So this is the first one for the header. So the class of modal header. And if we copy this section here and paste this in 2 more times, there we go. So there's our header. So the middle one is going to be for the body, and then the last one is the footer. So make sure this footer, body, and header section is all nested inside of this modal content div here. Otherwise, things won't look as intended. So let's see how we're looking so far over inside the browser. Let's refresh and click on the sign up button. So we can see straight away that the pop-up doesn't happen when we click on the button. So as you may expect, we need to link this button to the modal for it to work. First, we include an ID on the actual modal. And if we go to the top, so this ID is going to be any name of our choice. So I'm just going to call this modal. Then we need to add 2 attributes to the button, which will activate it. So the sign up button just here. We tell this button to activate the modal by first adding the data toggle attribute and set this to be modal. Then we set which modal we want it to activate by using the data target, and then setting this equal to the ID of the modal, so the hash and modal. And this is the same ID which we gave to the modal just below. If we save and try this out in the browser, now let's click on the sign up button here. Okay, so the button isn't quite working. Let's just go over to our code and check everything here. So we've got the ID of modal, and then the button. We need to add data toggle on there, so make sure that's spelled correctly. Reload, click on our button. Okay, so there's our pop-up, which is in fact our modal. But remember, we didn't add any content to the modal header, the modal body, and the modal footer section. This is why we see 3 empty sections on the screen. And this is what we'll move on to next when we add our form to this modal, so the user can add their sign up details.